Could the infamous dancing plague be attributed to a mass psychological illness? Was it perhaps just a crazy fad that swept the world? Or was there something more sinister going on? Stick around and you might just find out the answers to these questions on this episode of Unsolved Mysteries. Solved! Welcome back to the only podcast that's recorded from a secret room in some lady's summer home.
Oh, is that my summer home?
I don't know. Do you have a summer home?
Well, I have a home that I live in during the summer.
I don't think that's what summer home means, Cass.
Well, yeah, but I may live it in all the other seasons, but it's still a summer home because it's my home during the summer. That's only logical.
Right, but a summer home is a home that is only used during the summer.
Well, that's just dumb. Why do you pay property taxes for a property you only own or you're only using like one season out of 4? That's dumb as shit.
Because you're stupidly wealthy and you don't want to spend the summer months in a cold place is typically why.
Well, then they should stop living in the cold place.
I couldn't agree more. Regardless, it is yet another mysterious Saturday, folks. And do you know what that means?
What does that mean, Chad?
It means we're going to solve a Rubik's Cube and maybe a mystery.
Oh, yay, I hate Rubik's Cubes.
Yeah, well, buckle in.
Damn it. All right, fine, here we go. Click, 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 click.
I can tell you're not actually doing a Rubik's Cube. You're making that noise with your mouth.
Oh, man, you got me.
I feel like you weren't trying too hard to not get got.
My ruse has been discovered.
Anyway, I am your ever humble host and PhD in solving unsolved mysteries, Dr. Chad Kimmons. With me, as always, is my beautiful co-host, colleague, and worst pet psychic on the planet, Dr. Cassandra Cherry. Cass, how are you now?
How could I be the worst pet psychic on the planet? I have mental communications with my cat like 5 to 7 times a day. She does not like being called Chonky. You must respect her like that.
All I know is that I asked you to give me a reading of my cat, and you told me that it was a boy, and it's not.
Well, you once had a boy cat. How was I supposed to know that the one you kept was the girl?
Moving on. So do you know anything about the dancing plague? Have you ever heard of this?
Well, I know that it happens in Stellaris randomly on some planets when you colonize them. It starts happening and there's like gases that are being released from like some sort of plant there that's like an alien life form. And if you don't take it seriously and study it, then it runs wild through your populace and like causes devastation and death. And if you do pay attention, you can eventually get a party city as an asset on your planet that increases your population growth by 10%.
Okay, well, this isn't that.
Aww.
This is... I can't say it's not caused by a plant, but this isn't that.
Aww.
I guess let's go ahead and just dive right on in then.
I want to hear this. I want to understand how this is not actually Stellaris.
Well, I was about to tell you.
Well, go right on in.
So the best known case, we're going to talk about that one first. On July 14th of 1518, somewhere in the French town of Strasbourg, a woman named Frau Truffaut.
Oh, Frau Truffaut. Oh, that's very...
I assume it's Troffea. And it's French, so I assume it's pronounced Truffaut.
Yeah, it sounds kind of Belgian, maybe, because the mix of the German and the French.
Regardless, Frau Truffaut is what we're going to call her, stepped out of her home and began dancing. Soon, she had just a massive crowd around her.
Yeah, she's just pop-locking, dropping it, and just, like, twerking up a storm. Middle of the street.
I don't think that was what she was doing. This is 1518. She probably would have been burned as a witch. Or at the very least, excommunicated from the church as a harlot.
You're not wrong.
Anyway, some people clapped, some were laughing while they just watched her. But it was very intriguing because Truffaut had no control over her dancing.
Okay.
She did not choose to start dancing. She did not know how to stop.
Uh-oh.
She was suffering from what became known as dancing mania, or, like I said, the dancing plague.
Parasites.
And you'll see why it's called a plague here in a minute.
Okay.
But to everyone's horror, she kept dancing for 6 straight days.
Shit.
Not non-stop. Like, obviously her body wouldn't let her do that. She would have, like, fallen asleep eventually, which she did. Like, every night she would collapse, exhausted, with her shoes just soaked in blood.
Shit.
But she would wake up the next morning only to start dancing again.
God, that's awful. Did she, like, die from the dance? Or... Because this is like some fairy fae shit right here.
I don't think she did, but there have been people who have.
Okay.
So that's the basic backstory of that one, which I believe in my notes we get back into it again later. But basically, in Europe in the 16th century, this was not a new disease. This had been in existence since the 7th century, and it would just occur in phases with long gaps in between. It is said to have reached the peak, though, in the 15th and 16th centuries, infecting thousands of people and killing several as well.
Shit. That's pretty intense.
It reminds me of... You've seen Hocus Pocus, I assume.
Oh, yeah.
It reminds me of... Oh, that's not... I took a drink of something that I meant to take a drink of my tea and took a...
You took a drink of something that wasn't Yogi brand tea? How dare you? Our branding.
I know. We're
sponsorships we don't have and will never probably get.
We're going to lose those sponsorships that we don't have.
Oh, no, not the sponsors.
They were on the verge of calling us and being like, we want to sponsor you. But now...
Because you drank something that wasn't Yogi tea. How dare.
I don't know how I mistook the two, because one's in a mug and the other one's in a big-ass cup.
I mean, fair. I usually keep my coffee and my tea in literally identical mugs. They're both from my alma mater.
I only have the one mug.
All right.
Anyway, where were we? Oh, yeah, several people died. Oh, it reminded me of Hocus Pocus, when she's like, dance, dance, dance until you die.
I remember that vaguely. I haven't watched Hocus Pocus in literal years, but I remember that.
Bette Midler sings a rendition of Put a Spell on You.
Uh-huh. Is this the one where the kids get turned into their costumes?
No.
That's Halloween, isn't it?
That's Halloween Town.
Oh, okay.
It's, I think, the second one. Why do I know that?
Just because you had like a Halloween movie marathon night or something, like some 10 years ago, and it's like, yes, here's a fact that will be relevant 5-15 years from now.
My brain does not, like, I don't choose what my brain remembers. It chooses.
Mm-hmm. Did you know that catfish are covered in taste buds all over their skin?
That sounds awful.
Yeah, yeah! Can you imagine having to taste every single thing you touch? Random brain facts.
There's this comic, I want to say it was XKCD, where, or maybe it might have been Happiness and Cyanide, but they did a strip where this genie's like, I will grant you one wish between the two of you, so make sure you talk about it. And one of the guys goes, I wish he had taste buds in his asshole. And the last panel is just the other guy looking at him horrified.
Like, how dare you do this to me? This can't be undone. What have you done to me? Like, literally, that's the kind of thing that would end up with, like, a suicide, just, like, a day after.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's so nasty.
Getting back into this.
Right. Something that's less nasty, just dancing till your feet bleed.
Or till you die.
Yes.
So in modern medical terms, the dancing mania of medieval Europe was a psychogenic disease, which is a kind of illness in which a physical abnormality occurred due to psychological factors.
Yeah.
Just in case people don't know.
Science terms. Whoo, intelligentsia.
There have been no instances of the dancing plague in the 19th century.
Yeah.
There are other psychogenic diseases, though, that are common in contemporary times in the form of, like, seizures, body aches caused by sudden shocks or prolonged periods of emotional or mental distress. I think we just call that one depression.
Yeah.
Or anxiety.
Oh, the chronic disease of it all.
But a sociologist named Alan C. Kirchhoff, in the book Mass Psychogenic Illness, a social psychological analysis, said, with the advent of the Dark Ages and the pervasive concern with religiosity and righteousness, outbreaks of a mass psychogenic episodes became more frequent.
Weird.
Basically, he explained that the best example of such of these things from the medieval period was this dancing plague.
It's almost like telling people to repress the most basic and human of urges and emotions causes mental illness. Weird.
He also said that some of these epidemics affected other cultures in different ways. So.
Okay.
In the 15th and 16th centuries, however, there was little understood about the science behind the dancing plague. There were lots of different explanations back then, ranging from demonic possession, obviously, to the wrath of God, or a spider bite, and also consumption of ergots, which is a kind of fungus. It's a kind of fungus that grows on rye.
I blame the ergots.
I think a lot of them did as well.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like shrooms. It's not like, I didn't do a whole lot of research into what this is.
Yeah, because I've never heard of it before, but also I'm not a farmer, especially not a medieval farmer, so I'm not sure exactly what an ergot actually is.
But it sounds like it's kind of a hallucinogenic or something, or like
Yeah.
maybe makes you lose your inhibitions. And since it was growing on rye, they would cook it into the bread.
And then that could cause some problems.
Right.
Because they didn't exactly have very good fungicide back then.
But there was a Swedish physician, E.L. Backman, who suggested in his book in 1952 that some of these outbreaks of the dancing plague were recorded as early as the 7th century across Europe.
Yeah.
And he noted that amongst the first well-documented incidents was the one that had taken place in a Saxon town called... It's spelled Kolbigk. I'm not going to try to pronounce that. Kolbig.
Something. Hey, you tried to pronounce it. Ha ha ha.
Col-
Gotcha.
You didn't get me. I got myself.
Fair enough.
It's a weird word. But anyway, several people began dancing in a graveyard. Quote, until a priest cursed them to keep dancing for an entire year.
Shit. And then they're just like, oh, no, I guess I'm good now. Thanks, priest. You scared the living hell out of me. Quite literally.
Well, and see, I didn't find any more information about that, so I don't know if they actually did dance for an entire year. I don't think they could have. They probably would have died eventually.
Oh, literally, yeah.
But...
you gotta eat sometime. And you gotta stay hydrated or dehydrate, mate.
they thought it was so demonic or something that a priest came out and was like, fine, you want to dance? Dance for a year then. The power of Christ compels you.
Jeebus. Oh, that's scary. Oh, I don't want to dance for an entire year. I gotta celebrate Christmas.
What the
I don't know.
I'm sure that was their biggest concern. Not the fact that they would be dancing for a whole year nonstop, but that they might miss Christmas, Cass.
I mean, that's what I immediately thought of. I was just like, you'd miss out on the holidays if you were dancing all the time.
There was a similar incident that was reported by Giraldus Cambrensis, who was a royal clerk and historian in the year of 1188, about a religious ceremony at a church in South Wales. And in his chronicling of this, he mentioned there was an incident where, quote, dozens of people danced and sang around in a churchyard until they fell to the ground. Now, that one kind of just, it was a religious, what was it? It was a religious ceremony. That just seems like they were just dancing and singing, and then they got tired and went to sleep. Like, have you never partied with somebody who parties until they pass out?
Apparently never. Like, the medieval times, Christians, they don't know the meaning of, self-indulgence.
Party?
Or of party harding. They don't know how to party rock, you know?
You partying hard or hardly partying? One of the deadliest documented outbreaks was one that occurred in Rhineland in Germany in the summer of 1374. This was right after the Black Death pandemic had hit large parts of Europe. Justus Friedrich Karl Hecker. That's a name.
That is a name.
Yep. He was a German physician and a medical writer. And he wrote a book in 1888 called The Black Death and the Dancing Mania. And he described those affected, and I'm going to read a snippet of it.
Oh, please do.
So in this book, Justus Friedrich Karl Hecker said, quote, "They formed circles hand in hand, and appearing to have lost all control over their senses, continued dancing, regardless of the bystanders, for hours together in wild delirium, until at length they fell to the ground in a state of exhaustion. They then complained of extreme oppression, and groaned as if in the agonies of death, until they were swathed in clothes bound tightly round their waists, upon which they again recovered and remained free from complaint until the next attack."
Oh, jeez.
So real quick, let's break this down.
Okay.
I don't think he's talking about like oppression, obviously.
Yeah, because I was just like, oh man, the patriarchy. Ugh.
But that would be hilarious. I'm just imagining they finally get exhausted and just fall down, and right as they're going to sleep, they're just like, man, the king is taxing us too much.
Man, they don't give me enough for my health care. We should start a union.
Implying that they had healthcare in 1188 or whatever it
I know,
was.
right?
No, 1374.
Oh,
Still
jeez, yeah.
implying they had healthcare in 1374. But anyway, like, obviously they're not talking about actual like oppression from the government or anything. This was written in 1888. They're
Yes.
talking about probably being exhausted,
Yeah, more than like.
not having the faculties to control their dancing and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But what I really like about this is that basically, because it reminds me of every like action movie ever, where it says they were swathed in clothes bound tightly around their waists, like where they'll just like somebody's dying and they just tie a piece of their shirt around their arm and suddenly
Yeah.
they're better. That's
Like-
kind of what I'm thinking
Yeah.
of.
I mean, I immediately was thinking of like baby swaddling, but that too. It's like, okay, you've given me a tourniquet. I'm right as rain again. No, your arm nearly got cut off.
You shattered every bone in that leg. You're not okay.
You need to go to a hospital, man.
She's like, it's fine. It's not that bad. Shattered. Not just broke. You shattered every bone in your leg. And then I also like the part at the end where it says, and remained free from complaint until the next attack. Like, suddenly they have nothing to complain about. Everything's life's great. And then all of a sudden they're dancing again. It's just like, f*** those taxes, man.
Just dancing while they're complaining about their work situation.
Right.
I mean,
I mean-
that's a mood, but
Isn't that kind of what people do when they go to the club and shit?
I mean, literally, yeah.
Anyway, but at its peak, the dancing plague affected 500 to 1,100 people,
Uh-huh.
which I remember when I was reading this the first time through. I understand it means 500 to 1,100,
Yeah.
but the way it reads is, so either 5 people were affected or 1,100. We're not really sure which one.
Their language wasn't exactly that precise then.
They didn't keep great records. We know it was at least 5, could have been as many as 1,100.
Yeah, I mean, we tried counting them all, but once you get past the first hands, it gets complicated, man.
So at its peak, the dancing plague affected anywhere from 500 to 1,100 people. And while most of them recovered like bodily autonomy or whatever within 10 days of being affected, there were a bunch who relapsed at least once.
Yeah.
So this was something that like, it was an ongoing thing. Like they would have bouts where they just couldn't control their dancing, and then they'd be fine for a few weeks or whatever, and then all of a sudden they'd be dancing again.
So it's kind of like, what's going on here? What did those people eat that those other people didn't eat? I don't get it. Maybe they changed bakers. Who knows?
Right. The exact number of casualties that occurred during the outbreak in Strasbourg remains unknown. That's the first one we talked about.
Yeah.
But there is one chronicle that suggests that at least for a time, there were as many as 15 people dancing every day. Oh, no. As many as 15 people were dying every single day.
Shit.
Yeah.
That's a lot of dancing deaths.
There was a manuscript in the city's archive of that time that gives a small glimpse of the scale, and it says, quote, "There's been a strange epidemic lately going amongst the folk, so that many in their madness began dancing, which they kept up day and night without interruption until they fell unconscious, and many have died of it." So now Truffaut
Yeah.
was taken to the shrine of Saint Vitus, which is or Vitus maybe, which was a Christian saint from Italy, and many of the dancers were actually usually taken to this shrine in the Strasbourg incident, where over time their movements would cease, which just makes it seem like they died, but I think what they mean is that they would stop dancing.
Yeah, it's very confusing. Again, medieval English language, not exactly that precise.
But several cases of relapse were also chronicled, but eventually the epidemic just kind of vanished.
They were cured by the saint, blessed by Christ.
From what I understood, from what I read, was that it didn't gradually go away. It literally just stopped. So
the demon was expelled from their body. That, or they were just too embarrassed. It's
too goddamn tired to keep going.
Yeah, there's that too.
I'm just imagining, now we'll get into that in theories.
Okay. That's but.
Just the theory that I just concocted.
Interessante, I can't wait to hear it.
So a nuanced modern understanding of this bizarre disease came after one of the last major outbreaks, which was recorded in Madagascar in the 1800s, where it was called Tigritir, and it had infected hundreds of people.
Okay.
Andrew Davidson, who was a Scottish physician at the time, in a research paper in 1867, suggested that this disease, which was a psychological one, was associated with religious superstitions and rigid cultural imagination of the time. Basically, he's saying that things that may have been causes, like stress of the Black Death, political and religious conditions of the people, and unwarranted resistance of authority. So, I guess
they wanted to defund the police.
Something like that. I guess the best way to do that would be just being rebellious. Like when your parents tell you not to do something, so you do it anyway.
I guess, yeah.
All of these were amongst causes of the manifestation of this epidemic, according to him.
So, were most of the victims teenagers, or was it spread around at all the ages? Because that kind of description makes it sound more like a teenager thing.
Well, I mean, the unwarranted resistance of authority, I think, is it's more about that. I just use that example, but it's more of the people felt repressed, I guess.
Yeah.
And so this was their way of taking some control. Subconsciously was just dancing until they passed out.
Yeah.
Because dancing, I don't think during most of these times, I don't think dancing was necessarily outlawed.
Outlawed? Yeah.
But it was definitely looked down upon.
It's a frivolous expression of free will. You're not allowed to have free will in medieval Europe.
There you go with that radio announcer voice again.
Oh, it's a different radio announcer voice. That one was a female voice. Vaguely European, kind of.
But you're the one saying it, so it's always a female voice.
In my head, sometimes it sounds more masculine than not.
But no, I could not find anything about age ranges.
Okay. So,
because I do remember looking for that.
Yeah.
It didn't look very hard, but...
I mean, I guess to them it didn't really matter, I suppose. Maybe there's something in the language they were using that were cueing each other in onto what the age ranges of these supposed victims were. But, it makes it a little bit more difficult for us in the present who have more assiduous record keeping. That's true, too. The Dark Ages were the Dark Ages for reasons, and one of the reasons were they didn't record shit. They forgot everything.
So in an email, now we're kind of getting into certain people, what they think happened.
Uh-huh.
In an email conversation with IndianExpress.com, which was one of the sites that I used for this.
Okay.
A John Waller, who was a medical historian and an assistant professor of history. Yeah. God, this title. And an assistant professor of history of medicine at Michigan State University.
What a mouthful.
I know. Said that Strasbourg is a distinctive case because it was driven by a set of beliefs that have now largely vanished, meaning like the power of a saint to curse someone into dancing. Because I guess that was something that they thought was that the saint had cursed the town, and that's why they kept taking them to the shrine of Vetus or Vitus.
I mean, that makes sense because Vetus is life, and so they were creating an expression of life. So, but it's so weird to treat Christian saints like that. It's very much a different genre of religion.
Right, and that's what he was saying, is that this kind of belief isn't really around anymore.
Yeah.
But what happened there in Strasbourg does underline the power of distress, especially during periods of dramatic economic decline and social conflict, to make extreme beliefs more believable.
Yeah.
That was a direct quote from him, which, for anyone who, needs a clarifier there, he's basically saying that because of everything that was going on at the time, it made it more possible for people to believe that this was happening.
Just like how 2020 made it more possible for people to believe in QAnon.
Yeah, that's actually pretty decent.
Yeah, it's like almost 1-to-1.
He also said the dancing plague, the reason it didn't occur after the 19th century, again, this is just what he's saying. He said that it's an area for speculation, like only speculation, but he said that he did think it was worth pointing out that epidemics of dancing had always been very rare. Like there was a big gap, for example, between the 1370s and 1518.
Yeah.
Where nothing was recorded about this. Might just be because they weren't keeping records, but more likely just didn't happen.
You never know. It could have been happening in like isolated pockets. They didn't keep records, so you'd never know.
Right. But because it was so rare and there were such huge gaps between outbreaks, it's not really all that surprising that we haven't heard of anything since. That was only about 200 years, but it's been...
What if it comes back? That would be so wild.
I don't want to be present when it comes back.
Because it's just gonna be like, it's gonna be people having what you think is a normal rave, just a startup rave, and then it never ends.
Man, those ravers have been going for days, and like they're just inside the club going, "Please help us!"
No, it sucks so badly.
We can't stop, but they can't hear us over the music.
Party rock is in the house tonight. Everybody just have a good time. I'm gonna die. My feet are bleeding so badly. Doon 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 doon.
And they also said that, like, by the late 1600s, education was becoming more prominent in the world again.
Uh-huh.
And so people were less likely to blame it on saints who were cursing people. So
more prominent in the world, he says. More prominent in Europe. Let's be real.
The actual wording is they were less likely to lend credence to cursing saints, which just makes me think that the saints are just yelling obscenities nonstop.
Like a preacher on a campus corner.
Oh God, have you seen that TikTok lady? She goes around, I'll have to, if I find one of the videos, I'll send it to you. Like,
sure.
She goes around and she preaches.
Uh-huh.
But she's always like yelling, like she's super fundamentalist and shit. And she's always yelling at groups of students on campuses. And like these people will flock to her to sit and listen to her.
Yeah.
Not because they believe in what she's saying, but like she'll be like, if you go out looking like that, then you are a whore. And they all just start going, yeah! And like clapping and cheering and shit.
Jesus.
And she just keeps going. And like, there's one where this preacher, I don't think it's the same person, but I saw one where this preacher was yelling at people through a microphone, and this woman comes up in what looks like a cosplay outfit, but it's very skimpy.
Yeah.
And she's got a bullhorn, and she's just like, I just want you guys to know, I am a whore. I'll be giving out blowjobs later today, right over there. And she just kind of points, and then she's just like, so, do with that what you will. And then she just walks off to thunderous applause.
I love her. What an icon. Oh, gosh.
So another doctor, Dr. Samir Parikh, who is the director of the Department of Mental Health and Behavioral Sciences, Fortress Healthcare, said that psychogenic illnesses or cultural bound syndromes do not have just a like one symptom or even like a particular range of symptoms. Like it can manifest however the it wants, basically.
Yeah. It's just like, it's a mental thing. It can do whatever the it wants. We don't understand what's going on here. The mechanics behind this. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Mind is a complicated beast.
And he said that each syndrome is a different illness and thus has its own set of symptoms. And in each case, manifestations will be different based on people and their belief systems.
Right.
He also said that in the case of the dancing plague, you are looking at a time when there was no means of communication between villages, basically.
Yeah.
So we're essentially looking at closed communities with a very strong belief system and with a high level of interdependence and a lot of aspects of thinking where one leads to another. That's a direct quote. I think what he's trying to say is that because these people were so interdependent on each other, if one group of people started doing it, others would probably start doing it as well, subconsciously thinking that they couldn't stop because it was already happening to other people. Because they didn't have anything to compare it to because they couldn't really communicate with the next village over.
Okay, interesting.
I think that's what he's saying.
Yeah. Sort of like psychosomaticizing yourself into a dance to the death.
Right. But there's no current evidence to suggest that mask
mandates.
God. Are we just turning into anti-maskers?
I don't know, man. That's your Freudian slip. I'm just providing further context.
All of a sudden, we're the Alex Jones show.
Oh, jeez. Don't even.
Oh, like I'm putting chemicals in the water that turn the freaking frogs gay. Frogs gay. Turn the freaking frogs gay. Sorry.
I want to be a gay frog.
Okay. There is no current evidence to suggest that mass psychogenic illnesses have reduced. They may have changed form, but they still exist. And this is Kama Cheeber.
Okay.
I don't know. Kamna. This person, who is the clinical psychologist and head of mental health and behavioral sciences, also at Fortress Healthcare, is the one that this is credited to. What this person is saying. She said that most recently, in 2019, there was a report of schoolgirls in Malaysia who had started screaming, with some claiming to have seen the face of pure evil. It's like she was just using that as an example that psychogenic shit still happens.
Yeah, so they were watching the news and then they saw news coverage of the former guy.
And that's pretty much all we got on this for this episode.
All right, okay.
So why don't you tell me what's up first? What do you think is going on?
Well, obviously this has got to be some Fae shit, you know? Because the Fae have this entire thing where they will invite mortals to join them in their revelries, and if you join them, you know that you're never going to be able to stop. Like, it's literally the same thing. You can't stop. And so you're typically, the way the story goes is you're trapped with the fairies and you dance until you die. But maybe some of these people managed to escape from the fairy dance, but the curse still remained. And those who danced with them also got hit by the fairy curse.
Okay.
It's a short and sweet theory, but it's got
Fae? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's got history.
It's a better explanation than because I mean they're calling it psychogenic illness, but these are just theories about why this happened because we don't know.
We literally don't. It could have been a fungal parasite from eating bad wheat.
Right.
Or it could have been swamp gases causing imbalances in the brain.
Maybe. I don't remember what my theory was that I came up with earlier.
Oh no! Well, you gotta think of something now. Maybe it'll pop back.
Here's what I think happened.
What do you think happened, Chad?
I think they were so repressed and so overworked that, like, especially in Frau Truffaut.
Yeah, damn those Puritan ethics.
I think one day she was like, F it, I'm gonna dance. So she started dancing, and people were like, why are you dancing? That's not really acceptable. And she's like, oh, I don't have any control of my body. Like,
it's demons, Jim.
Right. So that she could just keep going.
Yeah.
And, like, they couldn't do anything about it. And other people were like, oh, I've just worked 37 hours straight in the fields. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to dance too. So I don't have control over my body either. I think that's what happened.
That, honestly, is so much more realistic.
And like, the people who died, it wasn't because they couldn't stop. It was just that, like, they were like, man, I don't want to go back to doing shit. Like, I just want to dance. You know, it.
If this is how I go, this is how I f***ing go.
Ultimate way out of having to go to work tomorrow.
That's the biggest mood. I'm gonna go to tomorrow. I'm gonna die dancing. Fuck it.
I think that's what happened.
I mean, fair. I like that theory. That's a good theory.
And then, you know, no, never mind. I was gonna try to work in. I was gonna try to work in the mole people, but
yeah, it's not gonna hit.
So I mean, unless you have anything else to add, I think we got this one.
Yeah, I think we wrapped this up pretty perfectly. We got some real good theories in here. One of them's definitely true. Either it was fairies that people managed to escape the curse initially and passed it on to others. And then it was just people trying to skip off of work because, you know, feudalism's a bitch.
Mm-hmm. I like how we're talking about this like we know from like experience. Like, man, I tell you what, when I was a part of feudalism...
You never know. You might have, like, lived a past life in medieval European feudalism. You never know. Those memories are sealed when you're reborn.
You know, knowing my luck, if I had a past life, I definitely was born a peasant in feudal Europe.
Statistically, the likelihood is high.
Right. Well, I think Mystery Solvers, we have done it again. We've solved yet another mystery right before your very ears. Well, I can't say eyes. They can't see us.
I know. Still. It's funny.
Normally I would do my little spiel here, but you probably know it by heart at this point. Besides, we have a very special announcement this week. Our 50... Yeah, you know about this. Maybe I didn't tell you I was announcing it, but...
Go ahead and announce it then.
Yeah, we're shutting down the podcast now. Our 50th episode is coming up pretty quick. It's only like 2 short months away.
Yeah.
Because this is number 42. So.
I think so.
We wanted to do something a little bit different. So we're going to do a live stream for the 50th episode, which means that you're going to get to see us solve a mystery live.
Yeah, live in real time, goofs, gaffs, and all.
No edits. You're going to get to witness all of our tangentled, unfiltered, absolutely ridiculous glory.
Oh, goodness. You guys, you don't know the number of things we've had to cut from the episodes just because we get interested in a topic and then we lose track of where the hell we were.
And on camera, too. It's going to be a live stream with, we're going to be using webcams.
Oh, see our faces.
There is more. Joining us for this special episode is going to be a very special guest, lovely Abby Rose.
She is so funny.
She is. Hello, Abby. You may remember Abby from the Man from Torred episode, and she's going to be coming back to help us solve a hell of a mystery this time. We're not going to give away what it is, but it's a big one.
It's gonna be big.
And then afterwards, we're going to do a little Q&A with anybody who's watching. We will try to have some questions ready to answer. So if you have a question for us, make sure you contact us on Twitter at UMS_podcast or on Facebook at Unsolved Mystery Solved, or by email, which is, as you probably know by now, Mysteries Solved Podcast, all one word, at gmail.com. Make sure you get that in before June 12th because that is the date of the live stream episode.
Yep, and if you do, we'll shout you out on the show.
Yeah, we'll pick the best ones to answer and then turn it over to anybody who's viewing to ask questions in real time. We do have a new bonus episode coming up Tuesday, so you don't want to miss out on that on Patreon. Again, it's just patreon.com/unsolved mysteries solved. I like how I'm like, I'm not going to do my spiel, and then I give all the information anyway.
Yeah, you do the spiel anyways. It's like habit at this point.
And I guess on that note, if Cass has nothing else,
nope,
then we'll catch you right back here next Saturday for a brand new mystery. And now it's time for Cass's favorite part. In the meantime, between time. Last week you were so eager to say this that you couldn't wait for me to get to this part.
If you question us, you will be put down. Mirthlessly. Wait, no, mercilessly. Okay.
Either or, it doesn't matter.
One way or the other. Wait, no, hold on. Let me redo that again. My voice sucked. One way or the other. We're gonna get ya. We're gonna get ya. One day. Probably next week. But we'll see you then, yeah?
Yeah, we'll see you next week. And on that note, say goodbye, Cass.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Thanks for listening. F***ing mole people!
Hey listeners, are you a fan of true crime? If you are listening to this podcast, then you most certainly are. During these strange times, are you looking for a new true crime podcast? Then you have found your new true crime obsession. My podcast, Riddle Me That True Crime, covers both older cases as well as current ones. I cover both well-known and more obscure cases, such as the strange death of Blair Adams, the cyanide coffee murder of Myrna Salihin, and the disappearance of Sri Lanka's richest man, Upali Wijewardene. Riddle Me That True Crime is available on Apple, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you. Now back to the show.